Deputy Chair. Welcome, Deputy Chair.
Thank you, and apologies from Chair Piri for not being able to be here today. Look, I just come here in the context of Rodney Local Board's transport targeted rate, which I'd just like you to bear in mind as I speak to you. And I've got no props or tricks or anything, so just your full and undivided attention, please. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge what is in the plan that we're quite grateful for Rodney. And first of all, that is the 4.7 million to go towards Hill Street, and we just hope that that's an indication of a very earnest effort to secure the remaining funding from NZTA on that. Also the increased budgets for maintenance and renewals, and we just hope that is enough to get on top of that backlog of maintenance deficit that we've been experiencing for many years. And also the return of the Local Board Transport Capital Fund. We've already spent 11 million of our transport targeted rate building footpaths, or we've committed 11 million to footpaths. First of those has been completed. By the end of this year, we'll have put 15 million of that transport targeted rate towards footpaths. But we are grateful to see any additional help we can get in achieving that goal. We support the additional investment into public transport that's indicated in the plan, but remember this is also an area that the local board has a lot of skin in that particular game. 3 years ago we were here requesting support to introduce that transport targeted rate, and I can tell you now that 2 of our 3 new bus services that we funded through that rate have been meeting their targets, patronage targets, and are being taken up by Auckland Transport, so that's a fantastic result, and we hope that the third one will go the same way as we're increasing the frequency of it. We're putting 3 million into a park and ride facility in Warkworth on our own land, on community facilities land, to help encourage more people to use the public transport that we have and to relieve our parking and congestion problems in Warkworth. So we've already put a lot of investment into that. We're thinking there's more opportunities for council to partner with us on investment. So we have this transport targeted rate. We could partner with you to invest even further in public transport. So do consider that, especially in terms of meeting your climate change targets. We've got huge growth happening in Rodney, and public transport investment is going to be vital if you want to meet those targets. We are still seeking an increased budget for the Unsealed Road Improvements Program. I mean, it was 3 years ago that we introduced that targeted rate. We floated the idea of being able to use some of it for sealing roads. It was only would only have been able to do a very small amount, but that was an indication from us that we were sticking our necks on the line to be able to increase that budget. And, you know, we did have 121 million go into the last long-term plan for those unsealed roads. So the 40 million that is in there for the new program, by comparison, we understand that money will go further when we're not just treating roads as sealing being the only solution for them. But we are concerned that it still won't be enough, and that program will be highly successful and that budget will be quickly exhumed. So if we can't increase that budget, and we will certainly encourage you to look to see if there's any way that you can, some other assistance by way of lobbying central government for the return of funding assistant rates for the unsealed for the sealing extension part of that program would be very much appreciated. The rest of that program, in fact, should attract subsidies, so we should get back good bang for buck out of that. That's the 3 main things that I wanted to talk to you about, but I appreciate there could be some questions, so I've allowed time for those.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. We have a question from Councillor Sayers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's in 2 parts, if that's okay. Thank you. Beth, thank you very much for your presentation. Obviously spent a lot of time talking about how the Rodney Local Board Transport Targeted Rate is assisting and looking for partnerships going forward there. So my question, first part of the question is more because this is around the RLTP process. So do you, now that the 5% rate increase has gone through, and also for townships of Rodney, a 16% moving from the rural to the urban rating systems, do you believe that the Rodney ward is getting back a fair share of the transport spend in comparison with other wards as a result of the ATAP and RLTP processes?
I honestly can't comment on the share of spend in our area. Our local board's focused on, there's a saying about God helps those who help themselves, and we've been very successful at leveraging funding in a number of areas, and our transport targeted rate is also there for that purpose. Those areas that have gone onto urban rates, we disagreed with that because some of the measures that we used to assess them we felt were flawed, and one of those was their access to public transport. Well, when that public transport's already being paid through a transport targeted rate, that seems grossly unfair. However, now that those properties are going to be rated in that way, we'll certainly be looking to see how that money is coming back into those areas and being invested in there, particularly in terms of transport and infrastructure.
Thanks, Beth. And just the second part of that question is around the Milldale development and what public transport initiatives have gone into that development, just picking up on your
Well, this is a huge concern, and why we were interested in talking to council about partnering or just increasing investment in that area. So we have massive growth coming in Kumeo, Milldale and Warkworth, but Milldale is already under construction. There's something like 1,000 houses gone in there, and it's going to be up to 5,000 total houses. There is no plan for any public transport provision in Milldale. There are no bus stations, park and rides or anything planned for that area. So we would hope that focus on meeting climate change targets will go into those growth areas, and not just Milldale, but, you know, as I say, we've got Kumeo and Warkworth, so we need to start thinking about public transport investment in those areas.
Very good point. Thanks, Beth. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Deputy Chair. Was there another question from somewhere? No? Okay, great. Yeah, Councillor Hills.
Oh, it's just a brief one, and congratulations, Beth, to you and Fallon. I think I sent you an email around that bus service, but, you know, fantastic what you've done. I guess what I can't remember the quantum, but what will you get to decide, or do you have to go back out to community to decide how to spend that money differently now that Auckland Transport will be taking on that bus service? And how much did you actually get from the kilometres wise on the footpaths from your targeted rate? Do you know that off the top of your head?
I'm sorry, I don't have that figure off the top of my head. But just to put it in perspective, a couple of those footpath projects are on state highways, and they are extremely expensive. 1.4 million just to build a relatively short section of a few hundred metres of footpath on State Highway 1 in Wellsford, and that's because it goes over a railway line bridge. So that when you think about 11 million investment into footpaths, it doesn't go very far when you've got that and another potential one at Kakapa worth about 2 million. So I'm sorry I don't have the price per, and they're complex, you know, because of railway bridges, because they're on state highways, because of there's drainage and everything else involved with them. Sorry, what was the earlier part of your question? Oh, about the bus services. Well, we would have to go out to the community if we were going to spend the money differently, or wanted to spend the money differently. What this allows us to do, by Auckland Transport taking up the cost of running those services, what it allows us to do is look at additional services or extending those current runs. So, and I think that's probably the direction we'll go.
Thank you so much. It was really brave of you guys, but it really has made a difference. So congratulations. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chair Holbrook. Okay, I'd like to welcome Adele White online, representing Howick Local Board. Welcome, Chair White.
Tēnā koutou katoa, talofa falava. Thank you for the opportunity to share feedback from our board. Do you have the slides?
We do have the slides, thank you.
No worries. So just referring to slide 1, the Howick Local Board supports the Local Board Transport Capital Fund being restored to 20 million. We want to continue with the implementation of the Howick Village Centre Plan. We are currently in the design phase of several elements of this. We also want to further develop the Howick walking and cycling network, which will continue to provide connectivity to transport, the option for commuters to walk or cycle to business areas, and for further recreational opportunities. Our board supports the restoration of the Community Safety Fund and requests all eligible projects to be commenced by the end of the 2019-2022 electoral term. This particular fund has been a lifesaver for us. Our board was recently confronted with a dangerous situation close to a new school in our area. The school was built on an undeveloped road with a one-way bridge close by, and children walking there from a new residential area could not cross with safety. So through this fund, we were able to add a temporary footbridge. Number 3, the Howick Local Board requests that the previously uncommitted budget allocated to this board from the Local Board Transport Capital Fund be restored, and that is a board view. We want to investigate traffic calming measures to a section of the parade between Langs Road and Whitcomb Road in Bucklands Beach to provide better pedestrian safety. This is a long-standing issue in a busy beachfront situation which the board wishes to explore solutions for. We would like to see the provision of more innovative on-demand or feeder services to enable the community to access ferry and bus networks. We receive regular complaints from our public stating that the buses do not service their location and that buses are often out of sync with the ferry timetable. The following items formed part of our local ward plan and have come from engagement with the wider community. We need to extend the existing or provide more bus routes and services to serve the communities of Flatbush, Mission Heights and the Murphys Road area, Cockle Bay, Farm Cove and Bucklands Beach. Our area is growing in so many ways, with residential intensification throughout established areas and huge residential development creating brand new neighbourhoods. And the only way that we're going to get these people out of cars is to have a well-planned and accessible bus service that meets their needs. We want to ensure that the airport to Botany rapid transport network is completed and includes Barry Curtis Park in any route design. Our board believes that this excellent project will be valuable not only to travellers but to those commuting to the airport business district, and connection to Barry Curtis Park would allow many to take advantage of this significant transport option. We request a review and improvement of the provision of shelters at bus stops, particularly in newly developed communities such as the Ormiston Flatbush area. We're, as I said, experiencing exceptional growth in this area, and this is an opportunity to promote the use of public transport by providing the well-planned local bus service I've just mentioned, along with the provision of bus shelters, and we have had numerous requests for shelters from residents in this area. We want to deliver pedestrian safety improvements around schools. We have some remedial issues at Botany Downs Secondary College that are still outstanding, and we have identified safety issues at other schools in the area. And lastly, we ask that funding be maintained and construction commenced on the following: the widening of Smales and Allens Road intersection, Stancombe Road connector in Flatbush, and the Mill Road upgrade. These are all long-standing projects which, when completed, will have a significant positive impact on these busy roads. Ngā mihi ki koutou.
Kia ora. Thank you, Chair White. We have a question from Councillor Dalton.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Adele. I was out your way on the weekend. I was down Flatbush School Road, and gosh, the growth is incredible. I can see the challenges that you're facing out there, and then drove back up Murphy's Road, and it just got the spread within that area is quite incredible. Just a question for you. The Local Board Transport Capital Fund has been restored thanks to a 5% rate increase, which your board did not support. My question is around the third bullet point on your presentation, that they also request the uncommitted budget from previous financial years allocated to the Howick Local Board be restored. How much would that be? Do you know off the top of your head?
I understand it was around 7 million, but I haven't got that figure in front of me at the moment. I can certainly provide that later.
Thank you. And if your board could also let us know where they think that 7 million would come from, and additionally, I imagine all the other local boards would want their funds back as well.
Absolutely.
Quite a strong list of projects, and I can see why you need them. Thanks, Adele.
Thank you. And look, as I stipulated, that was a view of the board, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair White. Thank you for that. Okay, now I'd like to welcome Franklin Local Board Chair Andy Baker and Deputy Angela Full-James. Welcome to you both. Thank you for your patience.
Quite all right. It's a big adventure in town. So just to put your mind at ease, I didn't see the memo that we weren't meant to go to the Auckland the Transport Committee, and I would have ignored it anyway. So we took the advantage to go, and just for your reference, Angela and I, as we always do, used our cars, public transport, and our feet to get here this morning. So that's the reality of living where we do.
Where did you park?
I parked at the Papakura Park and Ride, Daniel. It's getting resealed, looking good, smooth, no puddles.
Where do you live?
I live in Drury because the bus is only hourly and I'd have to stand getting wet when I go home. I usually use the bus, and I'm not using my e-bike in this weather. However, look, we're not going to repeat what we've already said in the LTP, but obviously we are very pleased to see the Transport Capital Fund, as all the local boards are, returned. We are pleased to see a commitment to increase in funding for maintenance and renewals, and we are equally pleased to see the additional 200 million for increase in bus and ferry services, and look forward to getting our snouts into that trough. However, there remains a need for a change in the renewal methodology and or the application of both OPEX and CAPEX, so we are able to renew our roading assets to meet current needs and not historic use. We talked about the massive increase in aggregate going out of Franklin to service the growth across Auckland, alongside the similar increase in fill needing to be relocated, much of it coming back into our rural areas from the brownfields development that is occurring in Auckland. That will not decrease. What must happen is that our roads are fit for purpose, both in the way they are designed and maintained, but modified to ensure all road users, from small vehicles, recreation cyclists and pedestrians, and heavy vehicles, can use those roads safely and with confidence. This means upgrading narrow bridges, creation of wider paved road edges, adoption of a more suitable design standard to allow for rural multi-use paths, and intersection upgrades at the like of Tourist Road Clevedon and Mill Road Bombay. Having sat through the Auckland Transport presentation to this committee on the 26th of May in the absence of any detail, we are disappointed and disheartened at the city-centric and brownfield development emphasis, not just for the next 3 years, but for the entire 10 years of the plan. It appears that the aspiration of Auckland's transport is to enhance what already exists within the urban centre of Auckland and to deal with congestion and creation of multimodal transport systems. I'm not suggesting they are not important. We are just seeking some balance. But that investment must not be at the expense of actual safety on the roads that Auckland Transport themselves tell us are where most people in Auckland are killed or seriously hurt. Rural roads. Roads that are no longer fit for modern purpose. Roads experiencing huge uplift in volumes, changes to vehicle types and sizes, and roads with the highest safety risk. Lowering speed limits is not the silver bullet. Sadly, it is the only bullet Auckland Transport have put in their chamber. With no budget, their answer is simply to drop speed limits on rural roads, creating confusion, division, non-compliance, and the rather perverse reaction of people taking greater risks. Engineering is one of the 3 E's of road safety that seems to have been forgotten in rural areas due to a lack of budget. Council's own agencies all have Franklin having the greatest change in population over the next 20 or so years. We are not sitting on our hands waiting for that growth to occur. It is happening, and at real pace. For nearly 11 years, we have not only battled to ensure we have some sort of equitable return for our rate and taxpayer investment, but we've also put our hands up and accepted that our landscape, environment, amenity and communities must change as we play our part in managing Auckland's growth, as well as the growth on our doorstep in North Waikato. Our message and request to this committee is simple. Join us in telling Auckland Council they must include in their 10-year plan appropriate investment in engineering-based safety and improvement initiatives on rural arterials and high priority sites like Tourist Road Clevedon and Mill Road Bombay, appropriate investment in the already rapidly expanding greenfield development areas, better public transport connections for East Auckland, including rural East Auckland, funding commitment for planning for the future development. The details not visible to us, however, thus far the key messages from Auckland Transport are not encouraging. We are seeing transformational change on and in the ground now. We are not seeing transformational thinking or funding for those areas that sit outside the city or metro centres. We ask for this committee's support to achieve a greater balance to the RLTP.
Yeah, that was pretty serious. Thank you for that.
I don't often do that.
So we have 3 questions for you, Councillor Henderson first.
Yeah, I'm really encouraged by the slide. It looks great. I think we should be providing public services and public transport out in different rural areas of Auckland. So just in terms of this, has this been sort of priced up, and is there a study attached and that sort of thing, or is that all to do?
Thanks for the question. Yes, there was an initial discussion with Auckland Transport on that, and they were looking at 790,000 per annum, or 2.9 over 10 years. And it could be one of those things that we could look at how Rodney has approached theirs.
We have Councillor Fletcher online.
Thank you. I appreciated your submission. I'm curious as to the comments that you make in and around the bullets with slower speed limits. I drive in and around the Franklin area on a regular basis, and I was perplexed to see that a couple of rural roads that are quite isolated in a shortish distance or space had, in some cases, I counted 6 change of speed limits along a 2-kilometre route. Do you have any input into the rollout of the slower speed implementation?
We certainly have the opportunity to comment on them, and I mean, the poor old Auckland Transport people turned up on Tuesday and got a reasonable comment in regards to how they apply it, and so look, we have the same concerns, Councillor, about the confusion that it's causing, and it's at the moment it just seems to be the only bullet that Auckland Transport have because of the funding.
I think also that the way in which some of these roads I've seen would have been very costly to have installed all these signs that are confusing and not necessarily achieving goals. But I'm happy to take that up elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Councillor Coombe.
Thank you, Tēnā korua. Thanks for presenting. Just a couple of things. I love the way you always include your map at the beginning of presentations, because I think it's really good for us to appreciate just how massive the Franklin ward is and so different to other local board areas. Also, thank you, Chair Andy, for giving a practical example of multimodal transport and where the use of park and ride is exactly how you should be using it. So that's just great to hear that you can do a multimodal trip in Auckland. But my partai is, with the park and ride, if there is a lot of demand for it, is there a willingness locally to pay for park and ride?
It's never been tested. It was tested once in Papakura, and shortly after the creation of Auckland Council, it was removed. It was $2. And so, look, I think there would be, because what people want is, you know, in the absence of any ability to use public transport to get to a train station, there is a need for them to drive. That is the reality, and it doesn't matter whether, you know, I guess, and Angela raised a really good point the other day in regards to, it seems like our roads seem to be getting the blame for everything. It's not the road, and it's not the roading project. It's the vehicles that use the road, and so we're always going to need roads because electric vehicles and other still require to drive on a piece of tarmac. And so we will never get away from that. And that is our concern. And so, it's for us, getting to those park and rides will remain a reality. And it doesn't matter whether we're driving EVs or we're driving dirty, what was it called? Carbon belching diesel utes.
I might just add to that in that what we're also looking for is connecting. So the ferry is a wonderful asset for this particular region, and people travel, as far as Clevedon and further to access the ferry. If there were those bus connections into the ferry, then you wouldn't have quite the same need for the park and ride that is substantially growing at the moment. And also if you had that bus connection in, you might leave, take the pressure off Papakura at the train, for instance. So it's just getting everything connected up. We're not looking for necessarily lots of service, it's just some service and peak times.
Thank you very much, both of you. It was a very hard-hitting presentation. Thank you both. Welcome to Manurewa Local Board, Chair Joseph Allen. Thank you also, Joseph, for your patience sitting at the back there. What is going on? Everything okay, everybody? Okay, sorry about that. Chair Allen, please proceed.
Thank you. Joseph Allen, Chair of the Manurewa Local Board. Thank you, Chair and committee members, for the opportunity to present today. We are very pleased the Local Board Transport Capital Fund is being restored. It allows our board to respond to calls from community for improved safety and connectivity. It will enable us to partner with AT and external parties to make every dollar go further and deliver more and better outcomes. Thank you. On the first slide, up there, you'll see an aerial view of the Takanini interchange and surrounding area. The railway line is highlighted in yellow, Great South Road in red, and the new Southern Path cycleway and walkway in pink at the bottom there. In 2017, we used our Local Board Transport Capital Fund to partner with Auckland Transport to purchase land at 286 Great South Road to widen the station access and improve passenger safety. We have commissioned designs for the redevelopment of the site, and you can see on the top left there's the artist's impression. We're now working with AT and Fletcher Living, who are doing the development at Waihata Shores, to carry out that redevelopment of the station road entrance. Integral to the safety improvements is the connectivity along the stretch of the Great South Road between Beaumont's Bridge and the Takanini interchange. This is a danger zone for pedestrians and cyclists, a light industrial area with car yards and multiple vehicle crossings, and a narrowed corridor from the street parking. And you can see there in the bottom left photo there, that's the photo of the Great South Road with the car yards and so forth. With intensification in the area, we need to act now so we do not see any more tragic events like the pedestrian versus truck fatality that happened 2 years ago. It was a day of heavy traffic, as usual, heavy rain, poor visibility, and as you can see, there was a truck coming one way, cars coming the other, and there was nowhere for the pedestrian to go. Our vision is for safe cycling and walking connections that will link Manurewa Town Centre with Te Mahia through to Waihata Shores, and to link up with the Waka Kotahi's new State Highway 1 Southern Path. Currently the Southern Path ends at Waihata Shores, and from there cyclists and pedestrians are left to make their way along the busy, treacherous stretch of road with no cycle or walking infrastructure. This needs to be addressed urgently. And because we've only got 2 slides, we'll put the back on the first slide. If you can see the zebra on the zebra crossing, as we're also requesting that priority be given to raising pedestrian crossings near schools. It's really important for our young tamariki, and it is urgently needed now to slow down drivers around schools and to keep our children safe. So moving on to the second slide. And this map there with the blue areas is showing the speed calming area treatments areas. So, and we've got those are numbered. These were given to us in a workshop, and these are numbered as priorities across all of Auckland. So number one is Coxhead. Is Wordsworth Quadrant, and that was done in partnership with Auckland Transport, and that's been completed, and we've seen a decrease in deer size. Manarewa has had the statistics of being having the highest deer size of any urban local board, and so now we've seen that reduce. We're so grateful to see in the area 2, that's the Coxhead Quadrant, so that's looking at 200 speed humps that are going to go in there or more, and that's part of the RLTP. So we're really pleased and thankful that that's going to be moving forward. Looking down at the bottom, we can see just keep an eye on the time. We've got some newspaper articles on the left. There's a 7-year-old child which was hit and critically injured. The next one there, that was the pedestrian hit by a truck. Mother, age 70, of 3, grandmother of 2. Over there, we've got one that was in the Jellicoe Quadrant. That's quadrant number 4. Grandfather of 5 and father of 5 and grandfather of 12. So these are things that really hit people. And again, 4 days ago there was another article that came through about vehicle versus pedestrian in the Jellicoe Quadrant. So look, we're asking for please to accelerate the Jellicoe Quadrant as well, and to keep those DSI numbers down. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair Allen. We have a question from Councillor Newman.
Good afternoon, Joseph. Thank you very much. Have you had any feedback from Auckland Transport that would confirm that despite the negative reaction from some, actually the perception of safety in the Wordsworth Quadrant following the completion of the project to achieve traffic calming in that area, from the majority of residents say that their perception of the area is now either safer or much safer following the completion of the project to get those 200 speed humps in those locations?
Yeah, so early indication is yes, it has reduced those DSIs. Of course, we've got COVID, which has impacted their ability to do tests, and they've sort of monitoring, but that's taken that setback. But early indications are that yes, it is improving it, and yeah, so we'd roll out the rest of it. Would be continue that good work.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation. All the best. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome Margie Watson, Albert Eden Local Board, Deputy Chair.
Talofa Tamarie, not quite. Good morning. Sending the apologies of Chair Lee Corrick, who can't be here today, so presenting on behalf of the local board. Didn't know that. Okay, next slide, please. Oh, perfect. Look, this is the reality of our area. So our map's a little different than some of the other maps, but that's every death and serious injury across Albert Eden in the last 5 years. Every one of those dots is a minimum of one person and potentially more, whether their injuries are so serious that it requires hospitalisation and long-term rehabilitation or a death. And that's what we're focused on. That's what our focus is in our local board area, because they are our people and the people of this city that travel through our area. We need to make it right for them. So next slide, please. Process. I didn't catch the whole conversation about the Transport Committee of AT, but I went along and presented. I was disappointed to hear that I was a stakeholder, not a governor of Auckland, but I was a stakeholder like many other groups, and I just think there's some refining of some process there that would be really helpful. Anyway, for our local board, we support the key projects contained within the RLTP that relate to rapid transport city centre to Māngere. We strongly support rapid transport to the northwest as well, and we request it's brought forward in the RLTP. That later years of the LTP for the initial work is too late. We know we've got significant infrastructure and housing growth happening on the isthmus and in the west, and into the LTP is too late. We have up to 10,000 people moving into what was Unitec in the next decade. They cannot own cars, they cannot move their way around the city in the way that currently occurs. So that's a request to bring something forward. For the CRL, we've been advocating for and secured a second entrance to that station that was not in the planning or on the books. That's a great outcome for community to use it and make it more accessible, but work needs to be done on securing the funding for that, because Auckland Transport do not currently have the funding for it. So we need that to happen. We support connected communities in there. We live, our area is represented by 100,000 people, and a lot of them live on the 7 key regional arterials that go through our area and transport people from outside the area into the city centre. That is where a lot of those dots occur on that DSI map. And so connected communities for Mount Eden, Great North Road, New North Road, Sandringham Road and Manukau Road need to happen. And Carrington Road improvements is on the list, and that is to service the new development on the Unitec land of up to 4,000 dwellings. They've had 2 blessings in the last 3 weeks for that site, so work is starting. But we need to ensure Carrington Road improvements is just not about bus improvements, it needs to be for pedestrians and cyclists as well. We do request some other projects are considered and added, because we're not getting to the number of some of the things that need to happen. I've heard other boards talk about their greenways plan and projects not being funded. We've got 2 key projects that we are requesting that are funded, that are outside the funding ability of our local board ever. One is the Western Springs to Green Lane cycle lane or cycle connection, which will connect St Luke's Westfield up to the ASB Showgrounds, Alexandra Park, the Green Lane Clinical Centre of the hospital, all the way through to Green Lane train station. We can't fund that. We will never be able to do that, and it's not in the plans. And also the Motu Manua Boardwalk, which provides alternative access and joins up to a connection already built in Albert Eden and in the faux local board for walking. We're also requesting grade separation of the railway crossings on the Western Line. CRL is going to open in 2024. None of the grade separation work on the Western Line has been factored in. There was 424 million in the previous RLTP. That hasn't come through. Most of the funding is going elsewhere. If you want gridlock in the west, central and west, that is going to happen on the CRL opening. We, and I think it's just missed people's thoughts. Acquisition of some key pieces of land to increase the use of rail so we can have additional entrances and kiss and ride at both Green Lane, Remuera and Mangawhao are requested. Just moving to the general focus areas and directions, we really support the general direction. Responding to growth, improving the network and compact city, and I've talked about our arterials servicing more than just Albert Eden, but we need to be looking to that mode shift and the housing pressures coming through. And responding to growth isn't really specifically identified in the plan, it's sort of scattered all through the consultation document. We'd like to see it to be a big issue and a big focus and integration with AT and planning and Auckland Council, so we're getting our infrastructure and spatial planning correct. We note our support for all the other focus areas that are on our slide. Whawhatai.
Whawhatai lava, Margie. We have a question for you from Councillor Casey.
Thanks, Margie. 2 little questions. The first is the walkability of Albert Eden. I asked the same question of John Turner about Puki Tapapa, and I see that your board has been on telly recently with regard to the state footpaths in Albert Eden. That's the first question. The second is your advocacy item with regard to reinstating cash fares. Did you raise that with Auckland Transport, and what has prompted that?
I'll take the second question first. So one of the things we did want to see is cash fares come back. So they were stripped out when COVID came along, and there needed to be no interaction between drivers and passengers. It has not come back. Our board mentioned it at Transport Committee for AT, but we're really strong on this. If we want to ensure that there are no barriers to people getting on a bus, we need to bring back cash fares. I talk to young people who say if their friends haven't got a hop card, then they go and get an Uber. That's not making the city work. They either catch a hop card off someone else or grab an Uber. We need to be smarter about that, and I know there are issues around cash fare collection, but we're creating a barrier to public transport and we need to bring that back. The same could be said about the limited number of outlets. There is not one outlet in the Sandringham Village Centre where you can buy a hop card so you can get on the bus. So, and if the bus driver won't take a cash fare, how are you supposed to use public transport? So there's some real issues there. I would urge the committee to look at pushing for cash fares to come back to the city. And the other was footpath maintenance. It sounds like there's been an uplift in that. Thank you so much. That is so needed. We have some shocking footpaths in Albert Eden as well. That will feed into walkability and give people choice. Hope that answers those. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maggie, for your presentation and for your the issues that you raised. Awesome. Thank you. Welcome to Victoria Short and Gary Brown of the Hibiscus and Bays Local Board. Thank you for your patience as well, being there. Over to you, Deputy Chair and Chair of your board.
Talofa. My name is Victoria Short. I'm the Deputy Chair of the Hibiscus and Bays Local Board, and supporting me today I have my Chairman Gary Brown. So the Hibiscus and Bays local area, which is from Campbell's Bay to Orewa, is going through tremendous growth. We have new shopping centres, industrial zones, huge developments happening in Millwater, Silverdale, Red Beach, Long Bay, and also developments like Milldale happening adjacent to our local board area. With any growth, there are challenges, and we've seen an increase in vehicles on our roads with very limited transport options available for our residents in the local board area. Which brings me to our first point. Sorry. One job. Public transport. There is a need for more frequent transit networks, FTN, in the Hibiscus and local board area. To have more FTN services running in peak hours would give residents an alternative choice to their car, especially in the Whangaparoa and Hibiscus Coast area, where public transport options are very limited. We currently have one FTN service running in our local board area that only serves a small percentage of residents. There are a few employment hubs in the area, so most people just join the queues and commute for work. Currently in the Gulf Harbour, we have a ferry service that only operates during the week. On your typical day, the ferry service takes about 1 hour to get to Auckland City. Now, if you were to bus, it would take 1.5 hours to 2 hours and 3 bus changes to get to the CBD. We would like to see an investigation into improving the Gulf Harbour ferry service with more peak hour options and an investigation into a weekend service. We also support the replacement and decarbonisation of the fleets, especially as this ferry currently runs its diesel engines along the edge of the Long Bay Okura Marine Reserve. Our second point is Glenvar Road. We support the re-inclusion and priority given to Glenvar Road and the East Coast Road Improvement Project. Glenvar Road was originally a dirt farm track, and this intersection has remained unchanged in layout for the last 70 years. It is a country road built to standards entirely unsuitable for the loads and numbers of vehicles it carries today. Already, we've seen a significant proportion of current maintenance budgets being spent on repairing Glenvar Road. One of the unique elements of this transport project is that not doing it costs Auckland Council. There is a lot of community anticipation from the Upper Harbour and Hibiscus and Bays residents for this project to finally start construction in 2022. This piece of road is the main connector for our residents and will allow our children to get to some of Auckland's biggest schools safely. It will also help ease ongoing major congestion and safety problems that our local board and residents see on a day-to-day basis. Thirdly, an increase in funding for footpaths and walkway renewals. Every transport movement includes footpaths. Every person in Auckland uses them, and walking is the most environmentally friendly transport mode. So why not invest and fix them? The draft RLTP states both the time taken and the quality of pedestrian environment is a key barrier to increasing the number of walking trips. While we can't influence the time taken, we are almost totally in control of the quality of the experience. Countless times we've witnessed our residents trip and seriously injure themselves on our uneven and unmaintained footpaths. We are unconsciously excluding residents from the community and making it harder for them to be independent. Many incidences like this that occur on the footpaths are not recorded by Auckland Transport as a part of the death and serious injuries, as they don't involve a moving vehicle. Therefore, it doesn't factor into the Vision Zero strategy, causing lower priority funding for footpaths. I know you are considering more than doubling the footpath program, and we are totally in support of this. It is a small slice out of the overall budget, but with huge impact on Aucklanders, especially our senior and less abled citizens. And finally, we're extremely supportive of the Local Board Transport Capital Fund provision to local boards, and we're also supportive of the Community Safety Fund. So to recap the 3 points I've raised: 1, better public transport choices; 2, Glenvar Road and the East Coast Road Improvement Project; and 3, increased funding for footpaths and walkway renewals. These are the needs of our community, needs that our community see that we in council are failing in. If we can make getting from A to B easier with less obstacles and better planning, then more people will be inclined to use our different modes of transports besides their car. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chair Short. We have 2 questions. Councillor Walker.
Cool. Got a question around Glenvar Road, which has been a hiatus for some years. Is the local board happy to have that project done in a staged way so that you actually get a start to it?
Personally, I think staged approaches to things just takes so much longer. I would personally like to see, I don't know, to see everything done in one hit, so it just lessens the disruptions, because this will cause a lot of issues. I mean, you've got East Coast Road, you've got Glenvar Road, and you've also got Lonely Track, so I think doing it in a staged way would actually cause more issues than cause less, personally, is how I see it.
I think the delay on it will be quite consequential to the ancillary roads coming into the area. It's going to be too difficult. Make it one big hit, people will get upset for a couple of months and then just go from there, or maybe longer. But it's important because, I mean, get it over and done with and get it sufficed.
Okay, and Councillor Watson.
Yeah, thanks for your presentation. I think I recognise that road in Torbay. I think I tripped on that footpath myself running up there.
It's a great footpath.
my question is on the commentary around the connector services, because we hear a bit in here. As far as the outer reaches of the East Coast Bays and Whangapraoa Peninsula, Army Bay, Torbay, Long Bay, which are quite heavily populated now, what's the obstacle to people jumping on a feeder bus to get to the park and ride to then start their essential commute into town and then onto somewhere else? Is there any sort of feedback you're getting as a local board on that?
It's definitely the time it's taking. So to catch, say, the 856 from Torbay to Albany bus station, it's a 45-minute bus ride, and that's just going through the back streets of Torbay. Prior to this new network, you had multiple buses running at multiple times, so people were able to jump on direct buses that would just feed straight into Albany Station. Well, now that's all gone. So the main issue is the time these buses are taking. Also, how many people are catching the buses. So if the buses are full, you basically can't get on, and that will just drive right past you and you're standing there. So that is the main issue, really, is the time.
And in the Whangapraoa area, coming from Gulf Harbour straight through to the park and ride, they go through the back roads, so it takes about an hour get through, which means, and then when you get down there, like I did today, got down to the park and ride, there was no parking spaces. If I park on the curb, I will be fined $40. So I drove into town today. I had no option because everything is full up there this time of the day, right through in the morning. It's insufficient. The park and ride is too small. It needs to be more parking. I know you've just increased it, but it's way past. So they've got the express busway from Gulf Harbour would help a lot to get people into the park and into the terminal and then onto Auckland. Most important.
Could I also add one more thing? It's also access to these bus stops as well. So to catch a main bus that will take you directly to Albany bus station, you literally have to walk half a kilometre to get there. It's on a main road. And if you know the topography of the bays and Whangaparoa, I mean, most residents who do catch the bus aren't able to walk the hills, walk through the access way, trip over a footpath. You know, it's not ideal.
Can I add one more thing, please? When we're talking about development of your subdivisions for roading, it's appalling. I don't know how much influence you have with the developers, but when you build a subdivision that you can't get any emergency services or buses through your roading, I don't understand how that works. We took a bus tour to see our parks and playgrounds in Long Bay. We couldn't get through because the bus was cars were parked. You must have some influence on that developers to ensure that you've got 6 metres wide to get those vehicles through. It's so important. I can't emphasise enough. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for that. On the line we have Mangere Otahu Local Board. Talofa lava lo awhionga taua nuu Nanai Nick Buckelich. And is Makalita Kolo with you there?
Yes, talofa. Good morning, Madam Chair and members. Yes, I do have our local board transport lead with me, Makalita Kolo. So in the interest of time, we're going to crack on and Makalita will start off.
Thank you, Dawano'o, and thank you, Madam Chair. Talofa lava, Madam Chair. The slide 1 in our presentation this morning, the Mangere Otahu Local Board's input is based on our RLTP feedback that was adopted in our April 2021 business meeting. In general, we support the Regional Land Transport Plan 2021. Number 2, our RLTP 2021 feedback acknowledges policy direction expressed by local and central government strategies and plans, given both fund transport costs. These strategies and plans include the Auckland Plan 2050, Ministry of Transport, Government Policy Statement on Land Transport, the Auckland Transport Alignment Project, and Auckland Council Long-Term Plan and Regional Fuel Tax proposal. Number 3, Madam Chair, that said, we also acknowledge the transport challenges faced in our region and the limited resources we have to meet this demand, like reducing the impact on climate change and the environment, improving travel choices and delivering safer roads. Our slide 2, Madam Chair, is number 1. We support the proposed RLTP NY. It delivers our local board plan, in particular outcomes 2. We are building well-connected, engaged and active communities. We see transport not in isolation, but holistically as transport impact our lifestyle, our local economy, environment, lifestyle, education, and connect us to other parts of Tamaki Makaurau. Number 2 in our slide 2, Madam Chair, set out the improves our travel choices. Our local RLTP submission result indicated that travel choices are the most important issue for our RLTP to address locally. We see that RLTP will continue improving the public transport customer experience, making it simpler, and easier to use to address population growth. Active transport deliver important travel behaviour, change programs such as Safe Schools and Travel Wise to encourage more and make some historical cycling infrastructure fit for purpose and consistent with our customer. Number 3, progressing public transport demand. The rapid transit network is developed to meet timely, reliable and frequent public transport demands to fit our lifestyles. Improving administration, service supporting patrons using public transport, in particular communities where English is a second language. I now hand it over, Madam Chair, to our Deputy Chair, Tawanui Nick Bakelich. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So just on slide 3, the light rail project starting in Mangere, that is our preference, the gateway to Tāmaki Makaurau and indeed the gateway to the nation. We have available and accessible land in our local area. We have strong relationships with other southern local boards and with mana whenua. Also, we have major infrastructure developments already in the local area that could save this project money and time. Developments like the Southwest Gateway Program, 20 Connect, Airport to Botany Rapid Transit, and the Auckland Airport Precinct improvements. The new improved Pounui Station interchange. Second runway to come on board once borders are fully open, and also the Central Interceptor project, Mangere phase of that particular works. We'd like to see better communications. We have a diverse engagement. Over half of our population are Pasifika. We have a growing Muslim community. Our community is young, and with a growing seniors population. We would want better visibility of the transport agencies engaging with our community, a community who uses different platforms to access information like online, face-to-face, at formal and informal gatherings, church, shopping areas, family and friends. There's more to be done in this area, messaging and call centres and places of where these messages are being promoted. We would request Waka Kotahi, AT, MOT, to come to the local board as we have strong connections to our faith communities, local Pasifika communities, and we have regular meetings with Kainga Ora and Ho Kainga Te Akitai. Madam Chair, I'll whiz through the last bit, and that would be in regards to local procurement, as shown in slide 4. We'd love to see an increase of local procurement, employ and train more Māori and Pacifica and those from low-income households to exceed a 6% social procurement target. Social economic deprivation analysis of 2013 to 2020, where there's inequality is increasing in the Auckland region, especially with South and West Auckland showing declining social economic performances, while more affluent inner city suburbs are showing stronger performance. South and West Auckland is particularly declining across a number of economic variables, such as employment, household income, consumption and education. Madam Chair, in closing, our submission is strong local procurement, not procurement in regards to Auckland-wide, but procurement, local procurement is the workforce in our wards. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tawanui and Makalita. We don't have any questions from... No, we do. We have a question from Councillor Newman.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Really, really good presentation. You might not be able to offer any insight, and we are in a public meeting, but I would assume that the value of the contract and the people that are working pursuant to that contract, they're now working at wage levels above the living wage as a result of that, wouldn't they? That would be quite an opportunity for that particular workforce, given the outcome of that procurement outcome. Have you got any comment?
Thank you, Councillor Newman. We would certainly welcome any jobs that offer a wage that's above the living wage. And you are correct, we don't have that final detail in front of us, but certainly those are the opportunities that we would aspire to for our local working demographic. And would love to see any evidence, Madam Chair, of those kinds of opportunities.
Okay. All right, thank you for that. And heard your message loud and clear about light rail starting at the gateway of the nation in Mangere.
Whakatai, Councillor Bartley, I mangui lava whiau matuti lea so. Soifua.
Soifua Manuele Aso, whakatai lava.
Thank you.
Welcome to the Whau Local Board, Talofa Lava, Chair Kay Thomas, Whasitua Mosa, Jessica Rose and Warren Piper.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you for this opportunity, and I should have said talofa lava as well. The Whau area is the gateway to the west and provides essential transport links between west, south and central Auckland. We would like to improve and increase the use of our transport links, especially for walking, cycling and public transport. We are concerned that Auckland Transport's emphasis on growth in greenfields areas ignores areas of intensive brownfield development, such as Avondale, where suburban streets are becoming increasingly congested. We are pleased with the news that some of our local board capital transport fund may be reinstated, but would like to note that the amount allocated across all local boards is well below the 72 million previously allocated. Also, our reinstated funding will only enable us to complete the Avondale pavers work, which was intended to be funded from our previous allocation, meaning that we will, in effect, receive no funding for the current term.
Yes, thanks, Kay. We are very concerned about the apparent decreased emphasis on road safety and initiatives around the Road to Zero strategy. And we do acknowledge the financial constraints Auckland Transport is facing, but would like to reassert that road safety should be a high priority. There is widespread public concern in the Whau about the state of our footpaths and roads and whether our residents can cycle or even cross the road safely. We're especially concerned about the safety of our pedestrians, many of whom are elderly. Several low-cost safety improvements within our area, including pedestrian crossings, have been cancelled or deferred in the past year. And we would just like to remind you that the parts of the Te Whau pathway that have been funded by the Shovel Ready scheme mainly lie within the Henderson-Massey local board area, and significant funding will be required to complete this game-changing piece of infrastructure. Over to you, Warren.
Thank you, Fussy. Demand for both commuter and short-term parking in New Lynn is exceeding supply, compounded by a lack of frequent, reliable feeder bus options. Generally, the region-wide strategy is to situate park and rides much further out on the edges of the public transport network and discourage people from using private vehicles within the current network where possible. But New Lynn is an exception because of the transit-oriented development, or TOD, which is unique within the region, and the specific issues around extending PT and feeder services into the Waitakere Ranges, where there will always be a need for private vehicle transport. Ability to access New Lynn's major transport hub, particularly once the CRL comes online, will be a huge benefit of the people in the southern Waitakere Ranges and their foothills and areas such as Green Bay, Blockhouse Bay and the outer parts of New Lynn. The New Lynn Urban Plan makes specific provision for a multi-storey parking building, and an AT parking study done in New Lynn in 2017 reinforced the need for this facility, identifying a significant shortfall in future parking capacity. The report states that it is proposed council consolidate current parking in one or more new land-efficient parking buildings, freeing up land for development and thereby supporting density targets. It's predicted up to a total of 900 off-street parking spaces will be required by 2024. Park and rides are a short to medium-term solution, and that they remove barriers for those travelling at irregular times, from poorly serviced catchments, or for whom commitments and errands require ready access to their vehicle. This encourages mode shift from single occupant vehicles and public transport uptake for people who aren't yet entirely ready to move away from private vehicle commuting. Because of the planned development of at-grade parking in New Lynn, the merchant quarter sites C and D will result in a loss of 91 car parks, and the earmarked McNaughton Way site will result in a loss of 207 car parks. The New Lynn multi-storey park and ride is about providing transit-oriented accessibility to our community and replenishing car parking that will be lost through commercial development. Investing in a multi-storey parking building is not sunk capital in such that it can be future-proofed, redeveloped or built on in the future. I hope you take the time to investigate this further so that we can provide and encourage public transport uptake, support local economic activity and provide a better climate-friendly future.
Kia ora koutou, ko Jessica Rosa Ho. I'm going to speak to the transport improvements to service urban growth. One of the things that I'm sure you've heard quite a lot today already will be the relationship between transport and climate change. Transport makes up about 37% of the emissions within our city. Mode shift, moving out of petrol-powered motor vehicles, is probably the strongest thing we can do to have an impact on climate emissions in Tamaki Makaurau. So I thought I'd just use a really specific example to try and describe this when it relates to urban density. Currently on St George's Street near where I live, there is the unitary plan allows that to be THAB, which is terraced apartments, terraced buildings and apartments, which means huge density within the area that's being taken up by developers and is being developed in an extremely high way. Yes, the no parking minimums are being adhered to. There will be lack of availability for car parking. However, there isn't anything that changes or triggers the road or streetscape in front of those urban developments to make them future fit. At the moment, the road has all the qualities it needs to be a healthy street. It has room in the corridor. It has trees alongside. It is close to amenity. There's a new community centre going in. Everything you would need. However, it is a hazard. Cars litter the berms and parking that is constrained already. There's no safe way to cross the road at either end or through the middle. Cars speed down it because it's wide, regularly exceeding 50 k's. 50 k's is too fast to start with. There's certainly a massive Newland Avondale bike path being put in. It is incredible. The community, I might be the only one in the whole of Tamaki Makaurau, desperately wants it unanimously. However, how do you get to it? I imagine some sort of levitating device, because there certainly isn't. Yeah, exactly. Devise rocket packs, and we can complain about those too. But primarily, you can't get to it, and there's no plans to make any way to get to it. So the things are there. If you want to get to the train, yes, there's a train. Yes, there's transport. It's fantastic. The buses. I took the train here this morning. However, again, you still have to be confident walking about a kilometre to get to either a train or a bus. The answer isn't putting a bus stop outside these developments. The answer is changing the streetscape to make it a nicer, safer place for people to use multimodal transport options. And in this way, the RLTP, or our Land and Transport Planning, needs to reconsider the road renewals budget and the corridor improvements budget so that every corridor at the point of renewal is assessed for its future fitness to a new urban city centre. Kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you. Right, okay, there are no questions. Oh yes, there is. Councillor Casey.
Can't let that pass. Did you guys present to Auckland Transport? That was just a brilliant presentation.
Yes, we did. We had to cut it in half because we had more time to the Auckland Transport Board.
And I'd also like to say that we were going to wrap it, as Fussy had recommended, and I very nearly started with that, but we had such constrained time that I didn't know we were going to have time to make a joke or not. So.
Really appreciate that you didn't rap. But yeah, very, very interesting to hear, especially about park and rides, helping to encourage public transport use. It's very good. Okay, thank you very much. Are you taking a photo too, Councillor Walker? No? Photos in the reception area. Welcome to the best local board, Maunga Kiki Tauki. You take as long as you want. Rālua Lelei, our only Tongan chair, by the way, Maria Meredith, and our deputy chair, Chris McQuarrie.
Kia ora and talofa. Just to start our presentation, the board endorses the LTP's reinstatement of the Local Board Transport Capital Fund to 20 million and have advocated for the previously allocated funding to be also reinstated. So in our first slide, it speaks of investment and clear plans for transport infrastructure in Onehunga, and so there have been discussions of light rail, which began in 2015, and the East-West link in 2014. So there's uncertainty of plans for East-West Link and light rail, as it's inhibiting public and private development from progressing in an area that's already experiencing significant growth. So we've been advised that Auckland Transport can't move ahead with the plans for a Onehunga Transport Hub due to the uncertainty of light rail. Hopefully that'll be sorted soon. The Onehunga community can't wait for clear light rail plans to progress the Onehunga Transport Hub, and the current train and bus station are not keeping up with growth and are disconnected from each other. So the local board are advocating for Auckland Transport to progress plans for the Onehunga Transport Hub. Light rail can fit in with the hub or work around it, like infrastructure in other areas.
Talofa lava. Invest in an active transport link connecting East Auckland to the Auckland city, and I suppose connecting Tamaki to Tamaki Makaurau, or as Mangere pointed out, that the heart was over in Mangere, where actually the heart is in Tamaki, and that's the other half of Tamaki Makaurau. Currently there is a disjointed active transport route from East Auckland, from Howick to the city centre, and we feel Tamaki is right in the middle and has opportunity to be able to connect all our walkways and cycleways through this area to make a massive connection from Waitemata to Howick local board through 4 local board areas. We think that there's been a lot of conversation around travel modes. We've known that cycling and walking in our reserves has been the best wellbeing tool that we've had to experience through the COVID stuff. So I'd hope that the council would keep their lens on and ensure that we are putting good investment into these other spaces so that we are able to move around throughout the whole of Auckland through areas of footpaths and cycleways. We currently have funded areas in our area and then unfunded areas in our area that aren't connected up. So we have a cycleway from Glen Innes to the city, and then we have Amity, which is connecting Howick to Pakuranga, to Panmure, but there's no connection to those 2 cycleways. We feel in the local board's plan, there is, in our local paths plan, there's areas that we think that we can invest into our paths to connect these 2 areas up with 3-metre wide paths that will actually show that there are areas within Auckland that we can connect up. Everyone is going all out of New Zealand to get onto a massive path and to experience New Zealand. I think it's actually in Auckland, but I think our paths aren't connected up. We have an opportunity to connect those paths up and put the investment in now for long term to be able to actually show that actually we don't have to cycle, we don't have to drive, we can actually walk in our area, and I think that that's a massive opportunity for us in our area. We feel that this will create a safe and convenient route on foot or on bike that connects communities with public transport or enables them to actively transport between the Howick Local Board and the Waitemata Local Board areas, connecting 4 local board areas. And that's our presentation.
Okay, that was quick. All right, any questions, councillors? I'm going to ask a question then. So there's a lot of talk about more walking and cycling. What has been your experience as a local board in trying to implement more walking and cycling, in particular through the Innovating Streets projects?
What a good question, Councillor, Madam Chair. I think just from personal experience walking and cycling, I think the walking is fine within our own local communities, especially around the areas that have been the local board had invested in, which is the Tamaki Path. So that is highly used and in high demand. And in terms of cycling, we have cycle paths around the community, but there probably needs to be more investment in that as well, especially with the urban growth in the area.
That was a good question, Madam Chair. I suppose with the Innovating Streets, that's brought some challenges, and in some areas they're not quite ready. but in some areas they are. And so we need to be able to be open to listen, but we know that there's a lot of the population that is supportive and there's a lot of the population that is not supportive. And sometimes it's just not ready. It depends where it is implemented. So in Tamaki, we had 3 areas where we implemented the innovating streets, and in one particular area over in Onehunga, it got a lot of negative feedback, but that was affecting a lot of vehicles. Over in the Tamaki area, there's not affecting so many vehicles, and so we're not getting so much feedback. So I suppose it's where the program is implemented, and if that area is ready for that program.
Thank you very much. Outstanding presentation. But no, thank you very much for your presentation.
Madam Chair.
I'm totally playing favourites.
Thank you, councillors.
Thank you. Kia ora. Okay, welcome to the Devonport Takapuna Local Board. Chair Ruth Jackson and George Wood. Oh, okay.
So thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you today. I'm Ruth Jackson, Chair of the Devonport Takapuna Local Board. I'm supported today by George Wood, and other members, I believe, are joining us on Skype. We had a lengthy resolution that I hope you've all had a chance to see. We're going to confine ourselves to some brief comments today in support of some projects and advocating some projects which are not contemplated in the RLTP or which we think particularly need to go a little further than they do. Firstly, Northern Busway improvements. We fully support this project, but believe it's imperative that it be funded much sooner than the current 2028 timeline in the RLTP. We need to stay ahead of our population growth and demand rather than wait. We've already got people being left at the bus stops. We don't want them to become disillusioned and that be another obstacle to that uptake of public transport. We advocate for increased feeder buses. None of our 3 bus stations on the busway have park and ride facilities, or so few that they are of no consequence. We also strongly advocate for a safe walking and cycling connection across the motorway road bridge at Sunnyside Road, which is currently very narrow, not fit for purpose and unsafe. That would link with the Sunnyside bus station and the future Northern Pathway. Yes, I know. We also very much advocate strongly for the Northern Pathway. All stages of that. We urge that whether or not the Westhaven to Akaranga section is held up for obvious reasons, that the Akaranga to Constellation part of that project go ahead regardless and possibly be brought forward and prioritised if there are difficulties with the other section. We ask for safe walking and cycling connections across the motorway to Lincoln with that at specific key points, which I have listed here. We also request an urgent trial of bike shuttles across the bridge, possibly in converted buses. There would be no need for planning, infrastructure, repainting lines. There would be no traffic disruption. We already have the Northern Busway there and ready to go. We could very easily and cost effectively implement a trial. We also advocate for greater capacity for bikes on our ferry services. Lake Road improvements, we said this in LTP, so I will keep this short. We restate our commitment to major improvement project in the RLTP along Lake Road. It's one road in, one road out. There's very little employment in Devonport, so it's the only way that people can get to and from their places of employment. It's the only way we can support our businesses by getting their goods and services in and out. Local Board Capital Transport Fund, we thank you for reinstating that through the LTP. We fully support that. We have a specific project, the Francis Esmond connection, which runs between Francis Street and Esmond Road. It's an essential missing piece in the jigsaw of our walking and cycling network. It has sub-regional benefits linking into our economic metropolitan centre of Takapuna, linking to the Northern Busway. It provides a safe alternative to Lake Road, which is in tune with our climate goals and also our Vision Zero goals. We also have the opportunity of partial private funding available for that, to the tune of some $1.3 million of private funding from a developer who is developing a site along Esmond Road. But if we don't have our ability to put in our share and act on that, then that opportunity will be lost, and that would be a major blow to our ability to complete that project. We advocate strongly for urgent action regarding the Bayswater Ferry Terminal. The ferry facilities are currently on private property. The lease runs out in 2031. That may sound like a long time away, but we know from experience we need to get planning and funding in place now to ensure security of that vital transport link. There is also a private development happening there, and we also need to work with the developer to ensure that we are on the same page there and acting there. Additional harbour crossing. Very concerned that the bridge is identified only as a part of the supplementary network and the rapid transit network. Strongly advocate that additional infrastructure be multimodal and include all forms of transport, not simply be limited to rapid rail. We strongly advocate this remain a priority. And thank you. Questions?
Thank you, Chair Jackson. Yep, Chair Jackson. Okay, questions. We have Councillor Watson.
Okay, just picking up your suggestion about the bike shuttle there, Ruth. So that would be a purpose fitted out bus that would just take cyclists, perhaps leave at certain times, and would, I guess, have the advantage of gauging the responsiveness of the local communities as a whole.
Yes, what we were thinking really was just stripping some seats out of buses, leaving some seats at the back. They can putting in a couple of bike racks, put your bike racks along, have your cyclists sort of sitting at the back of the bus up the stairs. It's a very cheap, effective, quick, immediate way that you can gauge the number of people needing to use that. You don't need you don't need to worry about the infrastructure of the bridge or whether or not the engineering conditions are right, or long and expensive property purchases to build long and expensive ramps on and off it at either end. And it's something that if we had the will and a small piece of cash, we could have that up and running in a month if we really wanted to. And we could run it up and down the busway, whether it's just Akaranga to Fanshawe or whether you run it down the entirety of the Northern Busway would probably, I think, be a case of how many buses you could throw at it and how, what the timetabling would be like. But it's something that you could do immediately, and it would give so many more, lower carbon transport choices for people north of the bridge. And in fact, people coming the other way. There's lots of people travel from the city, Herne Bay, those sort of suburbs, who could get on the shuttle on that side and come in this direction. I know a lot of people would use it in both directions. So you wouldn't I don't think you'd have an empty bus coming back in the mornings or empty buses travelling back to town at night either.
It's interesting, when the old Auckland Harbour Bridge Authority was in vogue, before the tolls were taken off the bridge, they used to have trailers that they towed across the bridge with mopeds and cycles and other things on them. So that went by the way, and it never got returned, never turned.
This has got the advantage of being able to take the people as well, which you couldn't do under current health and safety on the back of a trailer. But, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Newman.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Ruth and George. I actually have two questions, but I might not be allowed to ask them because I'm in the hands of the Chair's generosity. But with respect to Lake Road, as long as I've been here in Auckland Council, this just seems to be coming up. Where is this at? Are we at concept? Are we at consultation? Is there land acquisition to do? Physical work? What's the timing for this? I don't quite know where this is at. I hear about it. It seems very expensive. Where are we at today, and what's the distance between where we're at today and completion?
Good question, and and the answers are not entirely in the board's purview. That's probably AT would have a better answer for that. So as long as the funding is confirmed through LTP and RLTP, then we're urging that that funding be prioritised immediately so that they can begin. The planning and design process got paused through COVID. So for that to restart, we need to reconfirm that that budget exists and restart that process of AT being able to go to final design. So whether it is they've done concept, they've done detailed, indicative business case, detailed business case, the next step is the final design. And the board is looking forward to working very much with them on doing that. So when that restarts will depend on the money being there and AT's ability to fit that into their work program. So we obviously want that to happen, you know, immediately so that we can actually start putting a date on when we put spades in the ground and when the diggers turn up. Land acquisitions has been a thorny issue all the way through at the moment. There is no funding in that to do any land acquisition. But we believe Auckland Transport did have a confidential meeting last December, which has since been made public, where they say that they are now contemplating whether additional funding might be able to facilitate land acquisition. But we don't know, there's no decision on that, it's just a thought process that they have.
Thank you, Chair. Now, I read your submission, at para 42, you're saying the local board addresses renewals. But it seems to me that the renewals that you are seeking are betterment. Existing footpaths too narrow for wide, need to be widened. Likewise, an opportunity to improve footpaths by planting more street trees, including grass verges to support stormwater filtration. That seems to be more than renewals. That seems to require more than the renewals budget. There seems to be something more that's going to have to augment that. So are you proposing something in addition to the renewals? Because I don't think that you can do renewals plus all of that within the existing budget.
Certainly, and many boards have brought this up today, or a number of boards, is the need for more footpath renewals. This is an optimistic thing on our wish list, that when you're doing that, in order to really have those, to reach those livable city goals, those goals of having viable other transport options for people, is that our existing, one person with a pram type of footpaths that we've had for generations doesn't really work when you've got people on a scooter, say. And if there's no cycle lane, then your people on your scooters and your cycles and your prams and also your mobility, devices for our older people, you just don't fit people in both directions on our existing widths of footpaths. So I think that's a general thing across Auckland, not just limited to us, where really when we renew footpaths, we should be looking as a standard at widening them to allow, say, 2 mobility scooters one in each direction passing each other without somebody having to drive off into the road.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome our Kaipātiki Local Board Chair John Gillen and Deputy Chair Danielle Grant.
Hello, councillors.
Kia ora. Hello, thank you very much for this opportunity to speak to your committee. You may have seen our resolution. It's quite lengthy. We've decided to focus on just a handful of our top priorities. And I'll be handing over to Deputy Chair Danielle Grant to cover our first priority, which is the Northern Pathway connections, and then I'll be following up with a number of others.
Thank you. So the Northern Pathway is a key piece of infrastructure, and obviously, as Devonport Takapuna have just mentioned, there are certainly some questions. But assuming all is going forward, we're definitely in support of all 3 stages and appreciate that the Harbour Bridge section is absolutely paramount. But it provides all of those other connections into the rest of the North Shore and obviously to the rest of Auckland. We've got we've been working quite closely with Waka Kotahi and really finding that they do not have enough funding for all of the connections that we would like to see into the Northern Pathway. So there are a number of reserves that the Northern Pathway goes right beside, and potentially there's no linkage into them. So there's a list here. And we're working quite hard, and we're putting in our own renewal budgets, and we've been concentrating on these, like Tough Crater, for example. You know, over $1 million going in track upgrades that we've been chipping away with our renewals to make sure that we can have that connection to the Northern Pathway. So that's really quite key for us, and probably it's those ongoing relationships that we're all having with Waka Kotahi, Auckland Transport, to make sure that we can all achieve this outcome. We certainly agree. Our local board members have been talking about a bike bus over the Harbour Bridge. Please give it some serious consideration. It's not an expensive option, but it's something that links us, because at the moment we're finding that it's difficult to get across with the ferries, enough bikes with the ferries, and there just aren't that many options. Okay, so moving on, we've got Oniwa Road. So Oniwa Road connects through into the Northern Pathway, but what we're finding is that we haven't got enough of our infrastructure to actually be able to get back up from the Northern Pathway and back up into the rest of our community. So that's on the northern side, and we're really looking for a wider shared path. That's Northern Pathway. Over to John.
Thank you, Danielle. Still on Oniwa Road, we are looking for out-of-the-box solutions to the congestion on Oniwa Road, noting that many commuters will not be able to be enticed or forced onto public transport. And some of those reasons are due to needing their vehicle to pick up or drop off children, carry tools or equipment, to travel to locations outside the city centre that are not well serviced by public transport, to visit multiple locations in a timely manner during the course of the day, have multiple young children to manage, require the use of a pram or double pram, or have a disability that precludes public transport. We're also seeking an increase in ferry service frequency for Beach Haven, Birkenhead and Northcote sailings, and also improving the bus connections to the ferries. Ferries are the North Shore's equivalent of rail, and they require frequent and reliable sailings to both increase commuter and weekend patronage. Still on ferries, we are requesting that Council look into wake-free ferries to minimise the impact on coastal environment from ferry wake. We are seeing anecdotally an increase in erosion around our coastline since the ferries have been increasing, so it's something we definitely want looked into. We're seeking a survey of the Kaupari community to better understand the destinations of private car owners, where they're going, why they can't use public transport, to help us identify potential new bus routes in order to support people to use public transport. You will have seen recently a lengthy resolution distributed from us regarding the downgrade of suburban roads to chip seal. Since we passed that, we've been in discussions with Auckland Transport and have been looking at the rejuvenation technique which they are trialling in certain areas. We are seeking that the rejuvenation technique be applied to it lengthens the life of the asphalt road by a few years without needing to go to chip seal. So we're asking that that be seriously considered rather than downgrading to chip seal. We're also asking that Auckland Transport and Waka Kotahi negotiate an appropriate level of subsidy for the rejuvenation technique to ensure that the roads are no longer downgraded to chip seal. In our area, there's a particular intersection we would like considered for safety improvements, and that is Glenfield Road and Roberts Road. It's a very dangerous intersection and includes a blind corner. And the last one we're mentioning today is that there's an informal car park at 450 Glenfield Road that we request is returned to public car parking to support the local businesses and shoppers. It was purchased by North Shore City in order to replace other lost car parking. However, it is currently leased to a neighbouring business, so we're down in the number of car parks in Glenfield. And in our Glenfield Centre plan, we are looking at repurposing it in the future for a public square type activity, and so we're requesting that become public car park until such time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We have a question from Councillor Henderson.
Thank you. A bit of an eyebrow raise on out-of-the-box solutions to congestion on Oniwa Road. Do you have an example of what that might mean exactly for people that aren't familiar with that road?
Well, we're looking for out-of-the-box, so we're looking for new solutions. We'd like the whole area to be looked at and look for some new solutions. At the moment, it seems to be a carrot and stick approach, and it's not. It's just not working.
Just a supplementary, have there been studies looked into on the road, or is that something you'd be seeking to do?
We would like studies down the road. The main thing that for us at the moment is to find out why it is that our public cannot move to public transport more than what they are at the moment. And there are some definite reasons why. There was a small sample study done in 2018 that found that only about 50% of those going down the road are heading to this inner city. So we know we've got 3 schools on the road, we've got churches and that. So there's other reasons why they're using Wainuā Road. So we need to look for other solutions rather than just trying to get people onto the bus to get to the city.
Okay, we have Councillor Walker.
Just got a question around the bike the bridge, the bus for the bikes. There have been instances in the past where those sorts of things have operated sometimes privately. Has the local board considered maybe putting out an expression of interest for people that may be interested in that? Yes, it might need some subsidy.
No, we haven't at this stage. It's really it's an idea to see if it finds favour, and it was encouraging to hear that Devonport Takapuna are pushing for the same thing. So yes, potentially there is an opportunity for the 2 local boards to work towards something like this. Yep, thank you.
Okay, I had 2 more hands go up, but it's up to you guys if you want to ask your questions or keep going. Oh, that's okay. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 more boards to go. It's up to you guys. You want to go ahead? Yep. Okay, go for it. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you for that. I was just interested in your renovation road sealing technique. Have you seen that anywhere else?
Yes.
Yes, there is an example in Unsworth Heights, so just outside our area. I actually went on a trip with a number of AT staff to have a look at that. So that's the trial that's going on at the moment. It looks very promising. It is not subsidised by Waka Kotahi though, so that's something that we're asking. If that could be subsidised and that could become the new way of extending the life of asphalt services, and we won't need to downgrade them to chip seal.
Yeah, no, I'd like to come and have a look at that. And I see that it's it's made up of coal, oil, and other solvents and things like that. So that'll be interesting. But so your board's quite happy with that?
Yeah, okay, that's good.
Just to add to that, through the chair, we have had indicative indication that there will be several roads in the Kaipātiki local board area that will be able to have the rejuvenation technique this coming financial year as well. So I'm hoping that gets locked into place, and then we'll have some trial sites in our area too.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for that. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I'd like to welcome